and Rich Hall, and they're going to talk about fighting with spirit. Guys, thanks for stopping by. How are you?
Great, man. How about you?
Fantastic. Are you there, Rich?
I'm great. Thanks, Neil.
Absolutely. Because I didn't see his video, so no big deal. Jeff, kind of tell me about how this project started.
Well, I'll let Rich tell you that story because it's a pretty amazing story.
Go ahead.
Well, in a weird way, it sort of started with Jeff. Jeff's story was one of the ones that was portrayed in the movie Black Hawk Down. And so years ago, Halle Berry and I had made a documentary about Black soldiers that had fought in all the US wars we ever had. She and I won the NAACP Image Award and some other awards. And so I learned about 4 years ago that military chaplains even existed. I didn't know that that was a profession or a calling or a vocation. And I thought, what would inspire someone to go to war wearing a military uniform, but not carrying a weapon? That's a real head scratcher for me. And as I dug into that, I realized, oh, well, that's kind of what Jeff does. And then I talked to Chris Pratt, the actor, and said, hey, there's this really interesting profession out there. I think we should go explore it and, see if there's some stories worth telling. And he agreed. And so we kind of built this coalition of folks that said, let's go dig into these stories. There's been 419 military chaplains that have died for their service throughout America's history. And yet nobody knows their story. So ultimately we decided we were going to be the ones to do it.
And I'm sure you're blown away, Jeff, when you got the reach out to know about this, right?
Yeah. Well, what an honor.
More than just an honor. It's like this thought process, like, wow. And I mean, what does it take to be a military chaplain, especially, being on the front lines at times and different things like that?
Yeah. The military hires chaplains based on their faith background, but also they expect this extremely high degree of education. They all have to have a lot of experience. And as a result, the average chaplain comes into the military 10, 15, some cases 20 years older than the guys and gals that they serve with. And they're expected to do all of the same training, to do all of the same experiences. And in the middle of combat, those much older, much more seasoned people are right there in the middle of it, trying to support, trying to touch the soul of America's warriors in the crucibles of battle.
And it's got to be stressful at times. What was the most dangerous situation you've been as a chaplain? No.
Well, not necessarily as a chaplain, but I spent the first half of my Army career as an enlisted guy in special operations,
Oh,
kicking
thank you
in
for your
doors
service. Yeah.
and thanks and killing bad guys. And without a doubt, the fight that I was in Somalia was the most dangerous thing that I was part of, but it was also the thing that God used to redirect my future and to move me towards military chaplaincy. I didn't see that one coming. And it was only after the fight was over with that I started feeling very strongly called to go become a military chaplain.
And let's Rich, basically putting this all together, right?
Yeah, this is my, I think, 28th movie as a film producer, and it's my first, however, as a director. And so it ultimately was so powerful for me that it motivated me to step into the director chair for the first time. And I think when we did that, we ultimately wound up with this product, this finished movie, and we thought, what are we going to do with this thing? Do we put it on a streaming service? Do we put it on YouTube? And ultimately what we realized is that the natural home for this was in movie theaters. And we decided that Veterans Day would be kind of the perfect way to celebrate the movie and celebrate veterans and tie in with, kind of the national celebration of veterans on Veterans Day. And so it comes out in theaters November 8th. That's the first day of Veterans Day
That's
weekend.
great.
And it's also a few days after the presidential election. And I think people are going to just have a little election fatigue and want to find things that they can
Yeah.
agree on and find some common ground with their neighbors. And we thought, what a great way to have people experience the film by making them come together in their community,
Yeah.
with their friends, with their family in a theater, have the lights go down and experience this all together. And we've been out on the road screening this thing in advance for audiences, starting with the Pope in Rome at
Oh,
his screening room. Who knew that the Pope had a screening room at his house? And that was a powerful experience. And so people, I think the reason there's such a groundswell around this movie is that when the lights come up, people are just kind of blown away with emotion, whether they are people with a military connection, whether they're people with a faith connection, whether they're people with none of the above who just are fascinated by this world they didn't even know existed. And so ultimately we felt like it was our duty in a way to bring these stories to to audiences and theaters.
No, I mean, and Rich, how did you get it to this level, to get this opportunity? I mean, to get it to the films, to get a screening with the Pope. Are you kidding me? You must be really a hard worker getting that word out about this film.
Well, I'm motivated to please my Catholic mother, so that's why we wound up at the Pope's house, I guess. But nonetheless, I think, look, having partners like Chris Pratt allows us to really amplify the story, give the movie a bigger voice. We're reliant on people like you and your audience to tell their friends. I might argue we have a superhero movie, but perhaps in a different way. We surely don't have a superhero marketing budget. And so we have to get out there. We have to tell the story. Your audience has to tell their friends. You have to
Yeah,
make an effort to go to the movie theater and see these kinds of movies if you want to keep seeing them in movie theaters.
absolutely. So that's a great point, Rich. Let's go, Jeff, to you. What do you think you learned most from doing this?
Well, I'm glad to see that this part of the story finally gets told. And I have lots of friends who served in military chaplaincy, did lots of incredible things on the battlefield, and they really haven't ever told anybody, not even their family. So to watch audiences' reactions from this story, I think is probably the best part for me. Not just that the story is getting told, but to see the way people react when that story gets told. And I'm glad that this is hitting theaters.
I'm very glad as well. And I think that it's something that needs to be told. I think sometimes with the military, I was doing a live today with one of my clients that's creating and talking about transition stories in the military. And Rich, I'll definitely have to connect you because I know I'm going to have Rich on again and definitely give you this connection as well, Jeff, that there's a foundation out there that's trying to provide the whole transition stories for the military. I'm sure that you're seeing this, Jeff, on a regular basis. I'm just kind of piggybacking off of, what you saw as a chaplain, that it's difficult for military once to transition to civilian life with these challenges in the battlefield and everyday life as a military vet, right?
Yeah, every person that I know who served has struggled to some degree. And the longer that they served or the more that they've done, the more that they've struggled to transition back into normal civilian life.
And Rich, that what did you learn most about the military doing this?
Well, I'm not a veteran, and my dad was a veteran. I've got a lot of veterans in my family. The co-director of this movie, Justin Roberts, is a veteran. So that was important that we surround ourselves with veterans so that the lens that we use to tell these stories is very authentic. But for me, I think what I really learned is um, there's no way I could possibly understand without having gone through this journey the motivation of somebody that would go to battle and then choose to just be there to be present to support soldiers who are out there serving us as Americans. That question for me deserved to be answered, but it was a real head scratcher. And so I learned the answer to it. It would take me 2 hours to explain it. And of course, that's why we made the movie. So that audiences would explain it and would understand it when we explain it. But I think that's one of the reasons that audiences are having such a powerful reaction is that especially people who see it who have had some military connection, I feel like they believe that it gives a voice to their experience in a way that maybe they couldn't on their own, and that helps the rest of the world understand what they went through.
All right. I definitely think this is going to be a great film, especially when you think about specifically enough what it's going to show another side to the military. Again, the military, again, we don't give enough thanks for them keeping us safe, especially when half of the world is in some sort of battle, and we have our military, the best military in the world, protecting us so we can have these freedoms and these conversations and be able to be creatives like you and I, Rich. And I think that I want to thank you for shedding this to light. And again, we have our guest Jeff, who's the lookalike to John Cena. I'm just telling him
Yeah.
he needs to go ahead and start posting on TikTok, and that'd be a great promotion, and tag John and see what happens. You never know what can happen to get more PR.
Yeah.
That was my thought process. But Jeff, thank you again for your service. Thank you for what you do for the military. And you guys, best place we can see the film. Where can we go, Rich?
You can go to fightingspiritfilm.com. So fightingspiritfilm.com. And as we get closer and closer to the release date, the theaters will populate, and we'll book those theaters, and we'll be all across the country. So you can go and you can put in your zip code, you can find the theater near you, and you can go see the movie in theaters. And remember, it's only in theaters. That's the crazy part. Not streaming, not TV. It's only in theaters.
Hey, now could it be later? We don't know. That's for another conversation. Appreciate it.